Hello, hello. We're just getting set up to be able to get the Facebook Live going.
You want me to let people in now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I am not seeing to let people in. Have you made me a co-host?
I did. Let's see. Let me get there in just a second. Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome. I was all set up and then somehow I just got unset up. So welcome.
Good morning.
We are joining the Miracle Experiment Experience call this morning. We come together every Sunday. Today is December 10th, 2023, and we come together to talk about this book. Now, I know that this book is in Japanese, but this is called An Ancient Secrets of a Master Healer, and a Western skeptic, an Eastern Masters, and Life's Greatest Secret. So it's a wonderful book. We're going to be talking about some wonderful things about change today. Robin, would you start with putting on the video? While Robin is putting the video on, would you please put in the chat where you are calling from today? And if you want, what are you grateful for? So I'm going to go ahead and let her put on the video, and then I'm going to get the Facebook Live set up. So.
And families joining from all around the world, the divinity, that spark of light in me, loves and bows down to the divinity, that spark of light within you. So let's dive into chapter 13 of the Ancient Secrets of a Master Healer. This chapter is about obstacles and discoveries. The Dalai Lama said, "An open heart is an open mind." As we explore this chapter together, I invite you to reflect on these questions. How open is your heart? How willing are you to open up to something new and unfamiliar? So here are some of the highlights of chapter 13. Dr. Clint has many questions about what he has seen Dr. Naram do to heal people and animals using the ancient remedies of 𝗬𝗪𝗪. He seeks the advice of two friends to help answer his many questions. These friends are Professor Ludwig Max Fischer and Dr. John Rutgers. This chapter begins with this quote, "A simple paradigm shift is all it takes to change the course of your life forever." In the previous chapter, Dr. Clint's original questions about 𝗬𝗪𝗪 were changing from "does this work?" to "how does this work?" and from "how can anyone believe this stuff?" to "why don't more people know this exists?" So Dr. Clint shares, wanting answers during my remaining time in Milan, I reached out to two friends. The first was my friend, Dr. John Rutgers, who received a medical degree, but also studied many forms of alternative and complementary medicine. Dr. Clint says, with my internet connection and Italian hot chocolate in place, I told John of some of the things I saw and heard at Dr. Naram's clinics in India, California, and Italy. He asks, why, with all the money spent in American medical research universities, have they not yet discovered how to do what Dr. Naram is doing? If this kind of healing is possible, and these people are seeing life-altering results, why don't more know about this kind of medicine? Why is there resistance to it? Dr. John says, let's start with the big picture. Since the beginning of humanity, mankind has been trying to find ways to explain what seemed out of our control. Storms, changes in seasons, famine, as well as sickness and disease. Events that impacted human lives and crop production created a big need to find order, to have more control. While science and religion sometimes seem at odds with each other, they are actually expressions of the same thing, a desire for order in our lives. Dr. John says, once we humans find a belief that gives our minds a sense of order, meaning, and predictability, and we find security in that belief, it becomes difficult to change, no matter what evidence we have to the contrary. We gather as much evidence as we can to reinforce our belief, and at the same time we ignore, fear, or reject any evidence that challenges it. The human brain fears disorder and uncertainty, so it tries to resist them to maintain order. And we limit ourselves by this tendency, and it becomes an obstacle to seeing new ideas that we may benefit from, says Dr. John. He says the human brain resists disorder. It's what researchers call confirmation bias, and it's one of the worst mistakes we can ever make, to discount something too early because it goes against what we think we already know. Dr. Clint says, I get that. In fact, I'm still struggling, which is why I called you. Dr. John says, it's not that people will never accept what Dr. Naram is doing. Actually, more and more medical doctors are discovering the benefits of things like meditation, yoga, and plant-based diets. The paradigms of the Western scientific model don't know how to make sense of or even measure the impact of these traditional ancient healing sciences. What do you mean, paradigms? Says Dr. Clint. And Dr. John says, let's say you're playing football and a bunch of baseball players come over and tell you that you're not playing a real sport because you're not adhering to the rules of sports. To qualify their statement, they point out you're not using a bat and the ball is too big and the wrong shape. The truth is, you're not adhering to the rules of baseball. The Western scientific and medical paradigm has certain fixed assumptions that allows it to see certain ways. This led to some great discoveries, and yet also blinded it to seeing other things. That does not mean that other forms of science or inquiry are not useful. Dr. Naram is not playing the same game Western doctors are, but that doesn't mean that what he is doing isn't valid, explains Dr. John. Like your story about your headache and the onion rings, the Western model would set up an experiment to see if the onion rings do indeed help headaches. And if they can't prove there are significant differences between the onion rings and the placebo, a traditional scientific study would determine that this traditional form of healing isn't effective. Dr. Clint says, so you're saying that modern science hasn't shown this stuff is better than placebo? And Dr. John explains, all this proves is that their methods of testing are not yet effective at revealing the efficacy of healing modalities and procedures outside their own paradigm. Dr. Naram told you there are many different kinds of headaches and that onions are specifically used for one of the types. He is personalizing care based on things he can feel in the pulse that modern Western medical equipment is nowhere near able to detect. If these ancient forms of healing are so effective, asked Dr. Clint, why do so many respected people minimize or reject them? For example, When I tried telling a friend of mine who was a doctor from America about what I saw in India, he immediately said these herbs and ancient methods are not scientifically proven. Professor Ludwig Max Fischer says, I believe it's arrogant of us in the modern Western system to automatically reject another approach by calling it not scientifically proven. That merely means it doesn't fit our limited and relatively young tradition of modern medical science, which has only been around for a couple of 100 years. He says the concept of allopathic medicine only came into existence in 1810. In contrast, so many of the so-called alternative sciences have been refined by great scholars and healers for thousands of years, taking into account many variables that our scientists haven't yet considered, many of which our instruments can't measure. Our perspective is also very reductionist. We break things into parts. Western medicine breaks a person into parts, then focuses only on those parts. We take into consideration only those things we can measure. By contrast, the ancient healing ways considered the whole system. They understand how one part influences all other parts and how to bring them all into balance. Although people like Dr. Naram are operating via rules and frameworks that most of us don't understand, what we see is his caring and devotion to patients. He is a light that so many people are attracted to in their darkest hours. There is a Buddhist saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Similarly, I believe when the patient is open and ready, the healer appears. So I bring you back to those first questions. How open is your heart? How willing are you to open up to something new and unfamiliar? And I also ask you one more. What things have you believed in your life that you later discovered were not true? Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share the highlights of chapter 13. I thank my teachers. I thank my family. I thank the 𝗬𝗘𝗘𝗧 lineage for this wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And I thank you. I love you. I love, love, love you. And I'm with you. Namaskar, namaskar, namaskar.
I love Miriam. She has an energy about her that she just brings in. You can go right to your heart. She's such a beautiful soul. We're so grateful that we have these videos that she's recorded for us from the past. So beautiful.
Can we rub our hands together and just send her love? Just a divine being she is. For Miriam. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
She just tends to really get me in my heart. And I just am so appreciative of that. I really felt that this chapter has been on my mind for a couple of weeks. And, you know, with all of the change of the seasons, you know, we've got traditions. And I was looking at, you know, the differences, the way that I celebrate the season now is so much different than I did years ago. And what causes that change? And then also while I was watching Dr. Clint give his first meeting in Russian. That was so amazing. And I kept thinking, you know, what is it that causes our heart to open to be able to receive the change? And I wanted to kind of open that up, you know, when Luke was was hosting, and he talked about his awakening, you know, it sparked so many people had something to say about that. And I just felt like this, you know, when we make the decision to change, you know, how do we do that? You know, and we can see the struggle, you know, with Dr. Clint in as he was seeing these miracles, and it was questioning all of his reality. Well, not all of it, but a lot of it. And how did he, you know, he relied on certain people to be able to bring him back, to be able to see a new viewpoint. So I want to be able to open this up. Now, I've asked a couple of people. I've asked Joan, and I've asked Karen to be able to help and support the conversation. And and the Golden Angels as well. So I think I missed somebody's hand was up. Was that Diana? Diana, was your hand up? Did I miss something? Did you have something you wanted to share?
My hand was not up, no, but I love that chapter, and I love the fact that we are able, if we are willing, to have whatever our heart's desires are. And they may come in ways that we never expected. And just have that joyous, happy for no reason. So I so love this community, and I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, we're so grateful for you. You've done some amazing service, and I so appreciate you and your wisdom and your knowledge. You're an enlightened soul. You're a bright light. So thank you, Diana. So I'd like to open this up. I want to welcome all of you. You know, I see so many wonderful faces. You know, I'd love to have you turn on your cameras and be able to, you know, what is it that opens our heart to be able to make change? Joan, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, well, yesterday when you asked me to speak, I was thinking, oh, what could I bring to this community that people don't already know? So again, it's, you know, we live in our own world. We don't know what other people know. We don't know what other people don't know. We don't know what we can share that could help them, or they're going to be like, I already know that stuff. Like, that's old news. So I just came up with some ideas in my head, and I reread that chapter last night. And when I was reading it, I was thinking, and I remember the first time I read it too, I was thinking, oh, poor Clint. I mean, he's so disillusioned with how the world should be. Like, he's got such a huge heart, and he's wondering, why isn't anybody, you know, embracing all this great, you know, information and how it can help heal people? And it's like, you don't know about the dark side of things, like the dark side of medical interventions and the big machine and the money and all that other stuff. Because if the world really revolved around just our hearts and doing the best we could do to help people, that's one thing, but it doesn't. But it's up to us, I guess, to know that and override it by deliberately and consciously creating that feeling in our heart. So I think that what I wanted to share was that sometimes we have a different perspective on things, and that's how we can change our viewpoint, is understanding that we do have a certain perspective and other people have another perspective. And one of my teachers, 𝗬𝗎𝗓𝗓𝗓, who's a quantum physicist, he explains it very well, because he deals with, you know, the cosmos and understanding the cosmos. He says, you know, if you have a wheel that's spinning in one direction, we'll say clockwise, and I'm standing here and you have a person that's facing you looking at the same wheel, you are both going to swear up and down that I'll swear up and down that wheel is going clockwise, and they're going to swear up and down that no, that wheel is going counterclockwise. So they could go to the death, fight to the death, and they're both right. It's just that they have two different perspectives. So if we understand that there are so many different perspectives, because each person is sitting in a different coordinate in space and time based on also their past, as the universe revolves around the galactic center and we're flowing through, we are not even in the same place we were 10 minutes ago. It flows so fast, and it's a spiral. We're going through a spiral. So the old saying, you can't step in the same river twice, it's true in that sense too. I mean, even if the same person, if you said, okay, look at that thing over there. Do you notice what I'm seeing? I see the shape of a cat in that rock formation. The person's like, I don't see that. She's like, oh, here, stand where I'm standing and look right there. And it's like, oh, now I see what you're saying. So then you can communicate and come together and say, oh, yeah, now I know what you're talking about. Because when I was standing over there, what you were saying was crazy. I didn't see any cat. I didn't see anything. But the minute you brought them into your perspective where you were standing, now they can see it. But that isn't even the full story, because now the universe has changed positions. So you can't be at that exact same spot with that exact same perspective ever again. So just knowing that, I think if people know that, it helps a lot with their ability to navigate through life, and they can understand that, just because they didn't know something before doesn't make them a bad person, or like, because we have this tendency to always, well, that's my perspective, I guess. We have this story that we always tell ourselves, and that story can sometimes serve us or sometimes not serve us. So it's like, do I want to change my story? That's the important thing, because that story is our belief. That's what we believe. We think that that is true. And if we understand that maybe that's not so true, maybe I can change my point of view and allow myself to do something that maybe I wouldn't allow myself before. Because the biggest obstacle, I think, in life is not anybody else or any circumstance. It's ourselves saying, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I'm not good at that. I'm not good. I'm not good looking enough to be able to ask that person to dinner or whatever. We have so many stories that we tell ourselves, and we believe them, and they keep us stuck in that realm and that understanding. And I think that the reason why we have these stories, like Miriam was saying in the video from Clint's book, is that's to protect ourselves. We don't want our mind to be like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. That's not the rules of the game. Like, we want the rules of the game to be rules. Like when you're a little kid, you're like, okay, what are the rules? Okay, tag. Okay, you're not allowed to touch this person, blah, blah, blah. You have all these rules you make up before you play. And then you're running around and you're playing. And then somebody decides to change the rules halfway through the game. It's like, hey, that's not fair. I wanted to be a good person and abide by the rules, and so I can try to win, be successful in life. But you're changing the rules halfway through. So we don't like that. We like everything to be nice and, Cartesian, and have everything be predictable, because that's the other thing, is that our fear comes in if we can't predict the future. And that's why the brain, from the neurology side of things, is that it'll always err on the side of negativity, because it's trying to avoid any bad mishaps. So it's going to think of all the bad things that could happen. And then it'll be, okay, I'm going to prepare for that. Oh, there's a snowstorm coming. Okay, I got to make sure I got my shovel in the car. And it's always going to be thinking about all the negative things, because negative things can get you killed. Positive things don't get you killed. Positive things are like, yeah, it's fun, it's nice, it's great, but they're not a threat to your existence. If you have a red light and a green light, if you stop at the green light by mistake, I mean, the worst thing that could happen to you is the guy behind you or the person behind you is going to blast the horn and say, yo, wake up. It doesn't get any greener. Versus if you make the other mistake, you go through a red light, you could get yourself killed. So that's the way the brain works. It says, I am going to always look at the negative, because if I make a mistake and I judge negative things wrongly, and I judge them to be good, I could get myself hurt. But if I judge the opposite way, oh, something great happened, I'm not going to hurt myself if I missed out on a great opportunity. So, but there's a difference. And I always say, for my profession in osteopathy and athletic therapy, we have the medical system, and then we have like these alternative therapies. I always say that the medical system, the allopathic medical system, is basically saving your life. It's life-saving. That's why in the book, you know, he explains how, yeah, it's true. There's a lot of things that are very important in the medical system, the Western traditional medical system, life-saving things. Gunshot wound, you know, you're having a heart attack, you're having a subdural hematoma. There's so many things that can save your life, and they're very important. And that's allopathic. That's where their forte is. But on the other side of things, quality of life, saving the quality of life is where the side of the coin that I'm on. And it's true, because people come in and see me and they say, yeah, but the doctor said I have nothing wrong with me. And it's like, hey, whoa, nothing allopathically wrong. You don't have this huge tumor. You don't have a brain bleed. You don't have these major life-threatening things, but the person is still suffering and they're still in pain, or they're still having digestive issues, or whatever it is. And my job is to improve their quality of life, not just necessarily save their life. And both are very important. You know, if you're still alive, but you're suffering so much and you're on death's doorway, that's not a life, seriously, in my point of view. That's my perspective. And I know a lot of people would be like, if I got there, just pull the plug, because I don't want to live anymore. There's no sense in living for me if I can't do something with it. So that's my view on the allopathic versus the osteopathic, or the alternative viewpoint.
Well, just really quick, Joan, while you were talking now, let me grab my thought a minute. I loved how you were talking about how the brain has to have security. We create a belief because our brain has to have order in order for it to, to move forward. We have to have some sense of order. That's why we hold on to some of those beliefs. But in the chapter, he was understanding that his belief did not work for him any longer, and that he was seeing miracles being performed by Dr. Naram. And he needed a way to be able to let go of those beliefs. Now, most of the people, a lot of times, the people who Dr. Naram were seeing were people who had, allopathic, they said, we have no hope for you. And so they would come, and by reading the pulse, he was able, to be able to guide them, to be able to have a sense of healing. So I really loved what you said about, people come to you to be able to, because sometimes the things don't show up in tests. Sometimes your illnesses don't show up in a test. But even if we can take this even a little bit deeper, because he really went deep into the chapter, even into mindset, even the way that, we used to look at the planets, we used to look at how everything revolved around the earth, and it doesn't work that way. And yeah, there's just so much here. So thank you for those viewpoints. I remember when I very first came into this community, and even now, sometimes I still am skeptical. But I remember thinking there's no way, because when I very first came into this community, Dr. Clint gave me the assignment of being able to do the data entry. And I was taking the intake forms from the patients that Dr. Naram had and putting them into spreadsheets so that the data was more workable. And I was seeing these patients that would come in, and the patient intake sheets were a period of years. They could have been 1 to 5, 6 years. And the same patient would show up at the different clinics year after year. And I would see, person came with a wheelchair, is not doing very good. Dr. Naram, recommended this, did that. And then the next year, I saw the progress. And then the next year, I saw the progress again. And then the next year, he was walking. But I would see often people came in with a cane. They threw the cane in the trash on the way out the door because they could walk without the cane. Just, miraculous stories. And I kept thinking, is this really real? How can this happen? But it's true.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear, 𝗔𝗔𝗘𝗧, let's go to 𝗔𝗔𝗘𝗧 real quick. 𝗔𝗔𝗘𝗧, did you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I hear this, like, I can remember, like, many years ago, unwisely, I took my cat to be vaccinated, and I'm not telling anybody else what to do, but a friend had said, don't do it, you know? And it was like there were 25 obstacles on the way, and I did it. And my cat after that was never the same. And when I tried telling people, when I mentioned this to the vet, she was like, well, there's no way to know that that's what caused it, you know? On the positive side, there were some people that when I stopped taking a certain drug, I couldn't talk for like 2.5 years. I would whisper and had laryngitis, and one doctor said it could be a drug. And when I came off of it, there were people, it was very clear. I stopped taking the medication, my voice came back. I had tried all kinds of other things. It was very clear to me. And somebody said, well, you know, you can't prove that. That's anecdotal. No, it's not. It's my life. Now, does it constitute a scientific study? It doesn't. But I can tell you that when I did that, my voice came back. And
I
so
love what you just said, 𝗁𝗲𝗏, because in this world of Dr. Naram, you know, everything is a medicine,
Right.
and everything is a poison. And
right,
you are your very best physician.
right.
So for you to be able to say, you know, this is how this drug is affecting me, and I choose to do it differently. To say,
Right.
you know, we are not doctors here. We're not practicing medicine. I want to just say
Right.
something about the
Well,
medical.
it actually was a medical doctor, because I could not figure out why I was not able to talk. I'd gone to a speech pathologist, and I had an intuition, ask this doctor if it could be caused by by a medication. And he was honest and said it was Risperdal. It could be constricting the muscles in your throat. So I actually did go. He was an honest doctor. And so when I went and I finally was able to stand up for myself and get off that drug, my voice came back. So for me, that's enough. You know, I don't know. I don't need more evidence than that. I don't know about anybody else, but
No, that's perfect, because for you, that drug responded in a specific way. For somebody else, it may respond differently, and
right,
and
right,
that's why it comes back,
right,
you know.
right.
So
And I think the pieces that I liked what was said about, you believe things that are not necessarily true, but you're convinced that they're true. You know, you're convinced that somebody is a certain way, but they're really not. And you're, you know, I don't know how to say this, but for whatever reason, it's been very hard for me to keep implementing things. Like, that is very hard. The daily practice piece is very hard. I'm not quite in the place I want to be in. And I resonated when people were saying that, you know, how come people aren't getting it? You know, like, I get frustrated when people can't, when I look at certain events happening and people, things that seem very obvious to me, and when people don't do what I want them to do or see it the way I want them to see it, it's very challenging. And a lot of times I find myself, well, if I just, you know, like, state my point stronger, then they'll get it. But people don't usually, they don't usually, there's a point to it, because it's frustrating when I see some of the insanity that's going on around me. But you have to be able to kind of blend and shift a little. And when you do that, sometimes people will come around, because I find myself, like, I'm so concerned about conditions in the world, but it's like, how do you navigate this? You know, like, how do you say it in a way that people get it, when you see something that's happening that other people may not see? And like, how do I get a friend? You know, I told my cousin, you know, he's got some kind of cancer, and I called his mother and I said, I just talked to this woman who had cancer, and she did such and such. She was stage 4 cancer, and now she has nothing. Doctors told me she had cancer everywhere in her body, medically seen by x-rays. And when I called her, she couldn't hear that information at all. And it was like, wow, I thought that would be helpful information for you, you know, but it didn't help. And, you know, I don't know, because she's in a different paradigm. So I don't know the answer, but I'm just trying to be open to different possibilities. And yeah, that's
Schiffer,
what
you said so many incredible things, which I'm sure that so many of us on this call can relate to. You know, how many times have we been in a conversation with somebody and we've just wanted them to hear and understand in the way that we're seeing it, and it doesn't go through. And the truth is they're not in a position to, or they have different beliefs that allow them to see it differently than us. You know, I was just thinking about, I've been subscribing to some of these new Facebook pages where they give ways to be able to cook things that I have grown up with, but do it in a healthy way. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, you know what? I wonder how many ways there are to be able to make brownies. You know, there's the brownies with the flour and the sugar. There's brownies that you can make with black beans. There's brownies that you can make with avocado. There's so many different ways to be able to make brownies. And no way is right or wrong. It just is whatever you prefer. Now, I know that sometimes our perspectives are very, very ingrained, and we want other people to really hear that. And the truth is we have no choice over their perspective. We have choice over our perspective.
Right.
And that's what I think about with this book, is I love how Dr. Clint was seeking understanding for change. And what I noticed is that he had to let go of some of his old beliefs, or at least alter them to be different, to be able to accept. So, but you said some great things, Shifra.
Yeah, I think the only pieces that, when you see the world or people making decisions that, like, certain things don't matter. You cook brownies with, you know, black beans, somebody else cooks them with sugar. I mean, it's not so consequential, but there are things that really are very consequential. And, you know, and there are certain choices that can and will lead to very, very serious consequences. You know, like if I had stayed on those drugs, I don't think I would be alive now. You know what I mean? And I don't think I'd be speaking. So it does have consequences. So certain things are a matter of preference. You like the piano, somebody else likes the violin, somebody likes tap dancing, somebody likes, you know, crump. Those are all fine. But there are certain things that are very consequential in the world. And so I don't know how to be just, oh, well, you know, you want to chop down the rainforest. And I don't, you know, that's what I'm saying. That's the piece that's difficult.
Yes,
because certain choices have very serious consequences for personally and planetarily. And it's like, how do you go about that in a way that doesn't, you know, I don't know, you know, and I'm going to say it and then I'm going to get off. I'm just so saddened by the amount of destruction and devastation that's happening right now. And I wish, my wish is that people would understand that more bombing is not going to make this, it's not going to make it better. More bombing won't make it better. We want more bombing.
Right.
That's all.
So Julie, I really appreciate your comment here. She said that things on this call right now are frustrating her. Julie, would you like to come on? How about if we change the topic? I want to bring this into a way that everybody feels good and upbeat. Julie, would you mind unmuting yourself and kind of giving me some, I want to be able to make this so that it is a positive thing.
say it's a negative thing. It's not negative. That wasn't my point. My point is that we all have a perspective. The woman that spoke before 𝗫𝗓 was really nailing some things that I thought were very powerful. And then I was really engaged and she got cut off. And I was like, whoa, we're just getting to some real good stuff here. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go back to this video and rewatch that and find out who she is, maybe reach out to her, because that perspective I think is extremely helpful, because that's in the self-actualization of taking personal responsibility of your perspective. And I understand obviously what 𝗫𝗓 is saying. She's saying that we get frustrated that we don't let people, people don't see what we see, but it has to be reflected back on us, right? Well, what if I see people not seeing what I see? Well, what am I not seeing that I'm not seeing, right? Because I'm trying to control everything. So that's it. So I was just saying, like, oh yeah, there was a moment I was like, oh, wait, I want more. And then it shifted and I was like, and then I'm like, okay, and opening, I have to keep moving and changing and morphing because I have no control. So I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to work here within myself at that piece. So you were touching on that. So I was just making that comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of the
Nehemiah.
self-actualization.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate your
Okay.
insight.
Okay. I know you want things to be positive, and I'll go there. But like Julie, I want to say what John said before was absolutely true. It's not all truth. Nothing is all truth. And Socrates said that first of all, he said, I don't know. What I know is that I don't know. But he also said, in Hebrew, we call him Socrates. They're the same guy. He said, 99% of plus three quarters of what we know is not true. It's not the full truth. It's just part of the truth. Because we get it from many lifetimes. We have data in our system, and we have it from the enculturation, what we got subconsciously until we were 7 years old from my parents. And we continue. We don't know it, but we like automates. We don't know it. But here we are ready to expand our shift. And before knowing what I know now, which is still very little, intuitively, when I was 25, I stopped to take medicine and I stopped to eat meat. And I was higher and higher with this. And I'm not part of a group that, what they call them, a sign, whatever, that would never take it. If I need to, I would, but I didn't have to. What I learn now, and here I'm trying to come to a landing. There are ways to influence, but 𝗫𝗓, I'll be very honest with you. We can't change somebody that is not ready, period. Dr. Clint knows it very well. I forgot what the name of the great musician. How can I forget? The one that played for us all the time. What is his name?
Gary Malkin?
Gary Malkin. He didn't advise Gary Malkin about many things that he knew because Gary Malkin wasn't ready. He has this wisdom. And the people that say it the best was one Sufi. And I'm trying to learn because I'm the outlier in many places. Not in this place, but in many places I'm the outlier. The Sufi said something so beautiful. Every word you say should pass 3 gates before you speak out. 𝗫𝗓, listen carefully, everybody listen carefully, because I have to do it all the time to remember in my synagogue when they are so, I don't want even to say how limited they become now. One gate, it has to be true. You have to know that it's true, at least as far as you know. The other gate, it has to be beneficial. If it's not if you know that this is not beneficial, why bother? The third gate, it has to be kind to the person who listens to it. If you say something that the person is not ready, it's not kind for him. If I try to tell people that the Palestinians have a side and they are only looking at the Israeli side, they're not going to hear, and it's not part of what they need now for whatever contract. So the world is going through 2 processes. big contraction for many people because of the money, the power of money on medicine, on the industry of wars. The winners of all the wars are always the same, the industrial complex, the weapon one. So you have to look where. But on the other end, there are so many people that are waking up like us. We are a powerful group, but we are one of many, and I'm in part of them. So it's going like that. The power of contraction, of fear, becoming stronger and stronger, but with it, the power of love. And where there's love, there's no fear. The power of love becoming stronger and stronger. So I believe there's going to be some hard time next year. That's my belief. I hope, But I believe that we'll be able to, the power of goodness is coming so strong that before we destroy the universe, which is very easy to do, few atomic bombs, start it all. The power of love that comes from us, from all the masters of all the tradition, possibly from people from other planets. We don't know. Some people know. I don't know. I wouldn't say anything about that. This power is going always to win before we destroy this planet. So that's my positive point.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate your insights. As all three of you have been speaking, it reflects on, where are things that I need to change, Anyway, let's go ahead and go to Susan and Joseph.
Hi, thank you. This is a challenging conversation, I think, for a lot of people here. And some things that were said, I totally believe, like people believe what, this was said, what fits their paradigm. You see what works for you, that makes your mythology work, and you deny or don't see the other part. And what 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗧 is just saying is what the old joke about how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, it doesn't matter. The light bulb has to want to change, right? So that's the important key. Otherwise, you're speaking to deaf ears. But the one thing that really prompted me to bring this in is particularly in the medicine and the medical worlds get discussed in this platform. And what I hear that bothers me, and this is not just specific to the medicine, but to open someone up to a new belief, you can't do it by bashing the other side. Okay, whatever the conflict is, right? I mean, you're not going to make 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗦 open to people, or you're not going to open people to 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗦 by bashing allopathic medicine. Joan so nicely said, the way I heard it was, allopathic medicine saves lives. 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗦 medicine creates lives. It's a way of living. It enriches life. All right. So there's so many things that it all has to offer. And I don't like, I guess this is me, I don't like, what do I say? Fundamental thinking is fundamentally wrong, in my opinion. If all you see is this, you're missing the big picture. You're missing the alternatives and the options and the infinite possibilities. And I just would open people to think about not coming from the bashing the other side is wrong, and go back to the place of Naram saying, everything is either a medicine or a poison. It depends on how you use it. It depends on what fits for you, what works. And, that's life. I mean, everything that we do is either a medicine or a poison. So let's all be good medicine. Thank you.
And I I'm just going to add one thing that was life-changing for me, because you're looking for life-changing perspectives. It was, and I remember the day that I decided that I was going to take the power and control of my own health and healing. And I wasn't going to turn it over to anyone besides me. And that was the day that I went deeply inside myself to say, what is it that I need here? And it turned out that I needed to know what I was eating and how to eat differently. And I needed to know what was going on inside of me. And then I needed to choose. But the big factor there was I took power and control over my health and healing. What beliefs was I holding? Because I think most of us were so socialized that the doctor is the authority or somebody else has the authority. And it took me forever. I mean, I was in my 50s, but it was just like, screw it, I'm taking control now. And it changed everything. So I just wanted to throw that piece in.
I just applaud you. That is beautifully said. You know, I sprained my ankle a couple of weeks ago, and I've had some wonderful advice. Thank you. And when I messaged my boss, she's like, can you come into the office? And I said, well, no, I would like to stay at home because I can work from home. And she said, well, what does the doctor say? And I says, it doesn't matter what the doctor says. I says, it's what my body says. And it's so empowering when you take on your responsibility for your healing and for your health, and you give yourself the things that you specifically need. And this goes for all levels, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's on all levels. And that's what I love about this book is it does bring us back to ourselves. It does bring us back to our health. So Susan and Joseph, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Luke.
Thank you, Jana. And I very much agree with what you just said. It's all up to us to take responsibility for our own health, our own lives, and everything we do. What I've learned in my life, both personally and professionally, is that there is reality and there's a perception of reality. And everybody wants to defend their perception. And that's where we run into problems, because everybody thinks they are so right about their own perception. So I have learned that it's so important to be open and listen to other people and listen to other concepts and realities, because you might learn something. You might learn some wonderful new thing, whether it be medically or otherwise, that can enhance your life. And you wouldn't have been able to do that if you were so closed to somebody else's perception and so stuck on your own. So I think, that in what we do here with Ancient Secrets, there are so many people in this world who would, and I'm sure definitely do not agree with what we're doing. They just, because that's their perception. And that's okay. In the spiritual community, in terms of spiritual teachers, I had a wonderful teacher for 14 years named Rama. He was extraordinary. And yet he gained a lot of notoriety, very negative notoriety, because he was so revolutionary in his approach. So what's correct? The reality that people didn't like him because they thought he was a charlatan, or that those of us that were with him for all this time had an incredible life and incredible results because of him? And the same thing with health. I personally have been a health and wellness advocate for decades. And I prescribe primarily to non-allopathic ways of being, but sometimes I've had to go to allopathic medicine as well. And they both have their place. I'm not going to say one is better than the other. All I'm saying is, as John Lennon said, love is the answer. That's what it comes down to. And let's just have love and openness to each other's realities and perceptions. And hey, you might actually learn something. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you so much. Esther.
Okay, wow.
great discussion here. Number of things come to mind. The story of the blind man and the elephant, that again, perspective. Or I used to offer a book club at Barnes and Noble, and I'd started with a stone soup idea. Everybody's bringing a different, perspective, and the perspective is like the ingredient in the soup, because nobody is in exactly the same position relative to, the center of the circle. And what if we can suspend to create openness what we think is right or wrong? And then with that, what if beyond this or that, either or, we shift, like when we shift gears, we shift the paradigm to how about both and perhaps many more perspectives, multiplicity, not necessarily. We've been really enculturated and educated to think in the duality of either or, it's this or it's that. But there's this other thing we call paradox, where it can appear that this and that are contradictory, but they really, really aren't. So, and I want to end with one. I was in the talk, Joseph Chilton Pearce was the one that was sharing, and he was addressing doctors all over the planet because he had become aware of childbirth methods that were accepted that were really harmful both to baby and mom. But he was getting nowhere because he was so flabbergasted and so passionate about the health of the baby. It reminds me, Schiffer, of you and your passion for peace. But in doing that, the way he addressed the doctors he was talking to was so antagonistic, as if they were the problem. And he had a revelation. He shared this. He had a revelation, and he realized that what he was doing was not at all furthering what he wanted to achieve for the babies and the moms. And when he shifted to that openness, that kindness, not making them wrong, even though he didn't agree in that their procedures he definitely felt were wrong, everything changed. It was like flowers coming out to the sun. They listened. And he shared this as one of the biggest breakthrough moments in his entire life of teaching, and to what a difference that makes in terms of being able to connect with and be able
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the love, I mean, it looks like he came to a place, kind of what Luke was saying, a place of love, where you're understanding, you're coming to a place where you can support their ideas, and understanding will help bridge that. Well, an open heart is an open mind. And when you come to somebody in an antagonizing viewpoint, sometimes the heart closes. And there's no way that that person is ever going to get their message to that person if you come in that manner. But coming in it as, hey, I have this idea to share. Would you be open to that? Then maybe, possibly. And as you're sharing your experiences and your stories, then the heart can have the opportunity to open. And, and it was, Dr. Clint didn't throw away all of the viewpoints that he had towards Western medicine. He just shifted it. He just shifted the viewpoint, Bill. Thank you, Esther. I loved it. Bill, before you go, I just want to make sure, does everybody know the story about the elephant and the blind man? Would you mind just sharing that really quick, Esther?
Yeah.
It's such a great story.
I was fortunate. I learned this in high school. I went to a teacher Neva. It was, what's the word? I don't know. I forget for that. But anyhow, that's when I learned it, and it changes everything because they're blind. They can't see. One comes up to the trunk and has this whole experience of how, long it is, and somebody else comes to the ears and oh no, it's soft and flappy, and then the legs are like stumps, and oh no, the tail is just this narrow little wispy thing, and oh, but the side of it's like a wall, and they're all, if they all are insisting that they have the elephant in their perception, they're all missing the entire elephant, the whole elephant. And God, just to remember that. And again, it's not to say that some things aren't, 99% more poisonous, and other things, there's general, people walk on fire and are unharmed. But for many of us, that is not a very smart decision unless we're in that right framework to do it. So it's like, Dr. Naram uses the word flexibility a lot. And it's I think it's just such an incredible ingredient in the recipe for a life of love.
It is so true. It is so true. Thank you so much for sharing that. I had never heard that story about the blind men, going up to an elephant and then being asked to explain the elephant. And you explained it so beautifully. And
Well,
each one of
there's
them had
better-
such a different perspective.
There's way better explanations. Mine is kind of a little mincemeat of what I remember, but it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Belle.
It's so great. Great segue. I'm going to bring in a couple of perspectives from this amazing kind of inquiry into this, and one is several of us, I did a lot of work with landmark education for many, many years. And one of the things about doing the Landmark Forum was this opportunity to get out of the sea that we swim in as human beings and have a perspective of being able to look at, gee, nobody gave us the rule book about being human. But one of a couple of the distinctions that jump out at me at this is that our survival, we put ourselves together to survive. So when we're really with other, which there is no other, as we well know, we're getting an opportunity to feel the survival that they put themselves together with through our own ways that we put ourselves together. And one of them is being right and making others wrong. And, and we'll hang on to this because it's part of our survival sometimes till death do us part. I think we all know people that have gone to their graves right about what others were wrong about for them or in their own life. And that we won't really give that up until the cost is bigger than what we get out of it. And so, this whole aspect of human beings being designed to be right, and I often say, it's the pointing a finger out to the three pointing back to myself. What am I pointing out there that is wrong over there with the three pointing back that is right about over here? So, I think Esther saying, kind of flexible flow. I think all of us know on this call, we are all one. So there isn't, this whole thing of polarity and other and, I'm over here and they over there. The other piece that I got big time years and years ago out of Landmark was listening. And I forget all the time. But the other day I had a Zoom call, or a catch-up call with someone who lives in Brooklyn. Very different place than Ashland, Oregon, is Brooklyn, New York. And I had this, we're on different political blah, 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 whatever is that has other and, what I believe, what she believes and whatever. But what I got was just listen, find out more about why she believes this or that without needing to change any ideas, without needing to change her mind, without needing to intervene and say, I have a better idea, or, you haven't looked at it this way, or all of that. Just the magic of getting what's going on over there and letting her have the time to share. She said she'd never shared that much about that particular world, with anybody. And I know, because I know each of us are guided by our higher spirits. No matter how we've lived our lives, we do have these higher guides. And I know that out of her sharing, she began to see new things about, about her perspective. And I think that, if we just stopped and listened to, tell me more about why you, and then fill in the blank, why you think, and then fill in the blank, because that just provides this amazing clearing for getting out of our mind and getting somewhere else to look at the bigger picture. But, we don't do that if we're not listened to, if we have to get stronger about our opinion and our righteousness, all of that, and it's been said in many ways today, but I just really am just grateful, and, grateful for just even watching myself get out of my way about having a different opinion from a very dear, heartful, extraordinary woman. And, and she lives in Brooklyn. She has a whole different experience of life than, I have in living in Ashland, Oregon. And all of those things together is, can we just give each other room to have our perspective and it be heard and not held like we're going to be that way all the time, because we keep changing. And this conversation is one of those avenues for change. So thank you for that. Thank you for letting me share my perspective.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There were a couple of things that you said, and you said a lot of things, but there are a couple of things that I'm hoping to grasp. That I really liked what you said about, when you do the right or the wrong, you're saying my way or that way, what I've discovered with just the many, many people that I've worked with in this field is there's always something behind it. There's always something behind that. So even if you're coming, you're on one side, the reason why you're on that side is there's always something behind it. So you had said something, and let me see if I can remember it, because it was so profound to me when you were speaking it.
As you're thinking of that, Jana, I just read a book called Flying Horse, which is just an extraordinary book about lateral trauma. That actually, this the atrocities that were done to the Native American population are because of the atrocities that the colonialists arrived into this country with. That was, it's what they knew, it's what they grew up with in colonial Europe. And so they came and they mowed over, and took all the rights and the land and everything away from the indigenous. It's just an extraordinary thing to begin to think of our really deep-seated trauma of being human on this planet, that, that we've got, lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of, kind of what we can't put our finger on, but it actually runs and directs our show. And I think that that's really an important recognition for all of us, to kind of embrace our own kind of inner lateral trauma of having been on this planet for these thousands of years and had around us, the deep-seated atrocities of how we've been with each other. So I just sort of see that as another, whoa, it was really an eye-opener for me about that. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Karen.
I just want to piggyback on something that Belle said about when I was teaching diversity at the university. The class was called Dialogues on Diversity. It was not called Debates on Diversity. So we weren't debating and trying to, say, I think this way and you need to think this way. We were doing what Belle was talking about, being curious and saying, oh, how did you come to that belief? Why do you think that? And I had students come up all the time and say that was the best class they ever took, and they were seniors at the university, because people were listening to each other, and that really helped people shift their thoughts, because people listened to each other. I wanted to go back and just talk about a little bit about the paradigm from when I was reading in the book.
Thank you.
It reminded me about a shift that I had a long time ago. So I know when I'm really open and curious and adventuresome and willing that to try something new, that my life changes, like sometimes dramatically. And I had this experience through healing. Excuse me, I sprained my ankle really bad. I had somebody work on it. And I never had anybody do healing work. I'd always gone to the doctor. And I did go to the doctor and have it looked at to see if it was broken. But in that work, I had amazing things happen and a really wonderful healing. And because I had that experience, then I went on to take 2 years of healing classes, and it also strengthened my spirituality and grew that. So that led me just being open to something totally different. And it actually kind of freaked me out. It was so amazing that the change happened so quickly and so dramatically. But I didn't shy away from it. I went ahead and just, was curious and went further with it. And I notice in my life when I want to make change, I have to be usually really motivated by something. And sometimes it's by negative stuff that happens. Or I have a trusted friend that's really interested in something. So if I trust someone else and they give me information and I value that person, then I'm often willing to give that a try. And I am aware that even after taking the 100-day class, that sometimes information that I have, it takes me a while to incorporate it. And I'm just kind of curious about that with myself, and sometimes frustrated. And it's like, come on, this information. But I'm kind of like you, every once in a while I go, really, is this going to work? I'm just having a little bit of doubt sometimes about, is it going to work, even though I've had maybe experiences where it's worked. So it's so hard to sometimes change. I have frustration in my life right now where one of my best friends has done so much with doctors, and she really does not like doctors. She complains about them all the time. And it's really time, from my perspective, for her to try some, complementary alternative things that could help her. The doctors have not been able to help her very much. And a lot of times we do what we trust, not what we like. And she complains about the doctors, but that's all that she trusts, because she's not familiar with the other. And so she won't do the other. And the last thing I wanted to say about this was that because of reading this chapter, I went back to look at something else that another teacher that I had talked about. And it's Patrick Collard. And, he said, when we're in a pinch, we revert to behavior that we trust, not the behavior that we like. And he said the key to making what you trust and like the same thing is being in present time. He said one of the major characteristics of present time is change. Change means choice. Becoming familiar with present time allows us to become familiar with choice and change. In present time, trust and like are the same. Present time relationships are relationships where the familiar and comfortable pattern is choice and change. So we begin to trust change and we begin to like choice. But when we're in our core belief system, like and trust are exactly the opposite. What we like is feeling good enough, but what we trust is not feeling good enough. I thought that really got me thinking again, and I wanted to throw that in the mix.
Thank you, Karen. What you said was beautiful. You said so much. Let's see, we want to trust. Sometimes we are trusting, but we don't like it. That's what I heard you say, and it's very true. Sometimes we we trust things and we're not open to being able to explore and be curious about other things, which, wow, that's pretty powerful. Thank you. Luke. Thank you, Karen.
Sorry to raise my hand again, but I remembered an example I wanted to give and I forgot before about perception and reality. So as I've mentioned before, and I know a lot of people have heard me say, I spent a lot of time in the streets with homeless people, helping them and giving them things they need for survival. And I interact with them and I talk with them, and I spend time with them, and I've learned so much about them. Now, most people don't do that, and they have a perception that all homeless people are drug addicts and alcoholics, and I don't want to give any money to a homeless person because I'm sure they're going to spend it on drugs or alcohol. But my experience has shown me that that's just not true. Yes, there are some that are like that. But my experience has shown that, from my own personal experience, that most that I interact with are not that way. They're loving and they're appreciative, and many of them are trying to better their circumstances and work part-time jobs. You can't know that unless you have the experience. So what I have found in this world, that people make statements and they have perceptions based not on experience, but on just perception, just something that's in their own brain without actually having the experience. So the same thing holds true for medicine and healing. Now, from my experience, I use allopathic medicine when needed, but I tend to resonate with naturopathic medicine. My primary care physician is a naturopath. And my own personal experience is that I've had incredible experiences with naturopathic medicine and healing, and Eastern healing, and Chinese traditional medicine, and Ayurvedic medicine. So that's my experience. But somebody can come along and put all of that down and say, that's just voodoo. That's ridiculous. But they're not speaking from experience. So what I have found that's so important is to just be quiet and have the experience first before you pass judgment, before you make an opinion, which most people don't want to do. So I wish people would do that. I wish they would give themselves the benefit of an experience before they pass judgment, before they say this does not work and this does work. This is better than this. These kinds of people are this way. So experience is so very important. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. Thank you, Luke. I love that, because I am with you on that regarding the homeless. You know, many of you guys have heard, you know, my dad had an art gallery that was very close to where the homeless would hang out, and many of them would come in and ask for money. And there were many different, some of them just wanted it for the alcohol, but most of them didn't. You know, most of them were struggling in one form or another. And some were just trying to get to the next place. They were upright, you know, clean people. They just needed a hand, a helping hand. And I feel that I so appreciate what you're doing, Luke, more than you realize probably. Devananda, you had your hand up earlier and then it got put down, but I would love to hear from you. Thank you, Luke.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So many different perceptions. In my perception, my experience is that all of them are valid, because I have changed my perception so many times, and it's a natural process. Depending where we are, we have a different perception. I have had, before, when I didn't know about the Eastern medicine, I only knew allopathic medicine. When I learn about the, you know, ancient secret Eastern medicine, and I look at allopathic, and then yes, I heard some things, I had some judgments. I even had a doctor in a very challenging time telling me these exams are too expensive for the insurance company, you know, and it was about my life. But I can judge I cannot judge all for once. I cannot even hold that point of view and have hold grudges about allopathics just because of my experience. I think we hold conflict within us when we are unable to drop from our heads to our hearts, because there are so many great doctors and so many great discoveries in allopathic world as well that save lives, like you guys are saying. And it's all together. This is only one thing. It's not one side or the other, for my perception. And seeing myself in the past, even I had judgments, and I do, and I have to learn to always come to my heart. I think it's so natural. I also had the desire to change the world and change other people's opinion, think they were not seeing what I was seeing. But I also learned that everything happens in a natural time, natural way, God's time, however we call. And I learned that that energy that I so much wanted to change somebody else's point of view was the energy that I was wasting in looking inside of me, and how can I contribute? How can I open my mind and my heart for new opinions, new perceptions, new ways of seeing things. So yeah, flexibility and love and kindness. Yes, kindness always opens the way for, you know, a great point of view. So yeah, that was my sharing.
Thank you so much. It was so powerful what you were saying. It just reminded me of, you know, when you were talking about the differences between the allopathy and the Ayurveda and other medicines. You know, every time that I have worked with my mentor, because I'm in the PATH program with 𝗫𝗓𝗏, they never say one way or the other. If you're working with a physician, they want to work with that physician. And that's what I'm seeing, is that they want to work together instead of creating a separation. You know, there's just, it doesn't matter. It also, what matters is your belief. You know, go ahead, Daniel. I can't
Oh,
formulate
yes, yes.
with this.
And more and more often we see doctors, they're willing to see what's working for the person. You know, I don't think for what I have seen is not so close anymore as used to be like a decade ago. We have seen doctors have talked to people and they say, oh, my doctor is telling me to continue doing whatever I'm doing. And if I need, he will give me this medication and that. But yes, it's, I think even it's having compassion for our path, because none of these perceptions are wrong. They're only point where we are in the process. Because I have had many of them. I have had judgment. I may have judgments, yes, but always trying to look inside, looking out. Always like, what am I doing? What am I not allowing to have ease in this process now? And one thing is, yes, Jaina, when I had my own experiences that I had to get hold the drive for my own health, and I have had the experiences, I also chilled down, you know, I also cooled down and start having more understanding, and from a more peaceful perspective about everything else that we see so many conflicts. Because then we start having a little more maturity of respecting whatever point of view it is, whatever conflict is going on, you know, even all the things that we judge that are happening out there, they all have a reason for that. It's not up to me to make that whole change. Of course, we can always contribute in one way or another, but like I said, that energy of, oh, this is so unfair, this is so, that energy would always put me down. And instead, look inside and how can I find peace with it? You know, it will always help me and open a new way to be able to see and understand that. Yeah, I think I can talk a little bit abstract, but I think it may be some communication in it.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. And Renee, you had your hand up before and then it got put down. Would you mind sharing with us? I'd love to hear your wisdom. Oh. And Renee?
Yeah, there we go.
There you are. Okay.
I want to follow up on what 𝗵𝗡𝗙𝗓 was saying, because it was exactly what I was saying. And, you know, I think the new paradigm that we have to, the paradigm we have to change is moving out of judgment and into the heart space, right? Because we're all being called home to the heart. And this is where we're going as a collective on this planet, is back to the heart, right? Because the heart is always connected to the higher truth and to our, what I call the I am presence, or the higher self. So when we go to the heart, I've noticed even when if I just check my breathing as it is right now, just take a breath. Maybe everybody can just do this simple thing. Take a breath and just notice what your breath is right now. And then you put both of your hands on your heart and see how your breath, if it changes. And what do you notice? Right?
Wow, I noticed that I really became calm. I don't know if it's because it brought me to the present moment or just what, but I became very calm and grounded. Yeah.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
I find it does for me is like my breath becomes really expansive at that point. And yeah, I think it is about, because you come present immediately when you put your hands on the heart. So yeah, I really wanted to put that out. And in the oracle cards I use, there's a judge. I always want to take the judgment, make the judgment card into the discernment card, right? Because the judgment is from the left brain and the discernment is from the heart. And this is the divine feminine, and this is where we're going, is the discernment, and to really living our lives from the heart. And for me, this is what this community and this teaching is all about. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Catherine, would love to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. What's been coming to me in the last few moments is how comfortable am I with what I think suffering is. And I know part of what has driven me in the past to like change somebody or help someone because I perceive their suffering. And what I've learned in the last few years is, who am I to take away that person's suffering? Because that could be their greatest teacher. And so, you know, I had a situation with somebody who was elderly in a house I lived in, and I watched her suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer, and I had to let go. She had her perception and her experiences, and she was doing the best she knew how for her body. And I had to work with my own experience of what suffering means and what pains would come up for me watching someone else. So it's about me and my heart. And it's been a big lesson to not judge how somebody dies, not judge how somebody suffers. It's not my journey, it's theirs. And that's been very helpful for me. So thank you, everyone. This is an awesome conversation.
It's so great. What a great perspective. I could give some personal stories on that, but I won't because of time. And we've got so many people that want to speak. Shifra, I'm just going to go to Linda first, and then we'll come back to you. Linda. Linda, are you there?
Yes, honey, I am there.
Hello.
I promised Chris Richardson that I would announce this. That's just gives me the courage to show myself, be my biggest terror, that being seen in public. Chris Richardson is asking us all to do 4 minutes for world peace on December 12th. This is happening at 4:44 a.m. Pacific time, which is early, I know. She set the times, I didn't. Or 7:44 a.m. Eastern time, or 12:44 p.m. UK time. You could write her at cr4peace@yahoo.com, and I warned her I might get the details wrong. They just recently changed her name to World Peace Group. I mean, we're just going to take me as a wonderful, imperfect human being who nevertheless is very willing to step up to the plate to be of service to a great cause of world peace. Amazing how my being of service is something bigger than myself that I'm really passionate about. Just cast out my fear of looking ridiculous or whatever. And I don't know, that would be 2:44 a.m. Hawaiian time or 1:44 a.m. Hawaiian time. If you're the idea is when we all synchronize our minds to world peace for 4 minutes all at once, it's going to make a measurable difference in reducing that war energy in Gaza and everywhere else where there's war or conflict on this planet. And I believe this is workable. And I'm planning to set my alarm for 4:44 a.m. this Tuesday on the 12th. It's also the feast of Our Lady Guadalupe, for those of us who care about that. And I will see you all, dream you all then. And you can translate the timing for yourself in your mind, or there might be a place on the internet where you can look out for what time it is in your neck of the woods. I could be speaking to people in 10 different time zones at this moment, for all I know.
Linda, you're
Somehow
doing
4 is the number
fantastic.
of world peace as in 4 directions. And I'll put down her email address.
Okay. Thank you
for letting me speak.
Oh my gosh. Always. Yes. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations. You did a wonderful job communicating that.
Thank you.
I definitely will be setting my alarm as well. Shifra.
I think I'm trying to feel into my heart. It's been a very challenging conversation for me to listen to. I'm aware of an internal fighting that goes on inside of me. And I'm not quite sure how to put this, because I know that fighting energy is not very helpful. And at the same time, and I want to be open to new paradigm shifts, because some of what I've been doing has not been working so well. And I know that on a certain level, you have to be able to live with whatever is going on around. We have to live with whatever is going on around us. And if I'm uncentered and not able to make a contribution, that isn't workable. But there's something about, we're not in a place where the bombs are falling. And I really do hear that the Europeans who came here were traumatized, and so therefore they traumatized the Native Americans. But I guess I'm trying to, I don't know how to put this exactly, but there's a perspective of people who are in a more comfortable place, and there is a perspective of people who are in a less comfortable place. And, you know, the bombs are not falling on us right now.
Yeah.
And so I don't know quite how to handle it, but it's hard when I hear, well, it's just coming and it's going to be awful, but that's just the way it is. And I guess I want to be effective in the world in healing. And I also don't want to just be totally at peace with everything that's going on, because I can feel a cataclysm. That's all. I feel that. And I sometimes feel like almost like a canary in the mine or something. Everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Maybe it will, but I guess my perspective, I want to care about everyone. And I guess still my heart is in Gaza right now. It's not that I don't care about Israelis, but my heart is in Gaza, where those bombs are falling on people's heads. And I want to feel into what can we do about that? You know, my heart is with the homeless. I feel like they're me. And, you know, I've had addiction issues, as a lot of us have. And even if that person is drinking, I often don't give money because I don't want them to go and drink some more. But they're not necessarily lost, because those are some of the people that were my closest friends. I lost a friend on the, you know, to drug poisoning. He was one of the most beautiful people I've ever known. So I'm just saying, like, this is a beautiful perspective, but I wonder, well, what if there were a whole bunch of Palestinians on this call? Would it be different? Or if there were a whole bunch of Israelis, or if there are a whole bunch of, that's all.
You bring up some very good points. And again,
Right.
it comes back down to, what is it that you want?
Right.
What is
And
it that is your individual
right. What is my place to, and I want to do that in a way that embraces and loves everyone. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. And
well, I think that this might be a good conversation to take offline, and I'm happy to be part of that conversation. Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
But-
That's where I'm coming from. And I appreciate everyone and everyone's perspective, and especially healing the war on the inside, because I think that's where this all starts. Thank you.
Schiffer, I really, really appreciate your vulnerability right here. I really do. You know, there's a lot of times where I don't like to be in conflict. I don't. I would much rather be in peace, and I'll find a way to be able to work it so that I am in peace. And this phone call has really helped me remember that in my household, we did not embrace the shadow side. And there's an important piece in embracing that shadow, and as well as the light, because it brings both great wisdom. So I really appreciate your willingness to be able to look at different perspectives and be able to say, this is hurting me, but I know that it's not working the way that I'm doing it. And I want to be able to get a new perspective, but it's really hard to hear all this sugar coating, you know, type of language, like it's going to be okay. It is going to be okay. And you're right. There is a middle ground that will work for you. And when we have to identify what is our purpose, where are we right now in our purpose? What is the purpose to be able to move forward? So thank you for your vulnerability. I appreciate that. Because we're real close on time. So is it Marissa? Love hearing from you. Thank you, Schiffer.
Hi, everybody. What a great conversation this is. What a gift this is for all of us. And what is happening and what I see is that people are being triggered. Wounds are being opened up. We're being tapped. We're being poked. We're being, you know, these perspectives. And what that actually is such a beautiful opportunity to deepen into understanding. So the openness that we're speaking of, you know, we have all these different levels of openness. Like, how open are we? You know, so these are these questions that we get to bring back after this call into our daily life. And we get to work on that. And that's the beautiful thing, that it doesn't end here. It doesn't just all happen here either. We get to take it. We get to walk it. We get to believe it. We get to create what we need to create. And here's the thing, when we go through all these challenges and these triggers and what this opportunity gives for us, that God is saying, this isn't all for nothing. There's something here. And we may not know what it is, but that's what our faith is. And that's what we get to carry with us. We get to protect our peace also. And that was another piece that kind of swirled through here. It's been just kind of like a, what would it be, like a traffic system, like the freeway and the loops. And we've been everywhere together in this call in such a short amount of time. It's beautiful. And to not want to debate, but to dialogue was what I heard that really came out, which is a beautiful thing. But what my experience is, yesterday I had to end a 1.5 year relationship with someone I love very deeply. And what I learned was, you cannot change someone who's not ready. They weren't ready to deepen with me. That was so hurtful. And maybe subconsciously I knew that was kind of coming, but I held on to the hope, the faith. I deepened my own perspective and understanding, even without them knowing. So I continued to work on myself. And you know why this isn't going to be very hard for me? Like, I know I changed because I'm hurt, but it's not going to be hard because I chose myself, and I loved myself more than I loved them. And that might be really hurtful to say, but before, like in all my other relationships, I would love them more than I loved myself. So then I had to like collect everything because I lost myself through it all. And so the greatest thing about this, I feel today, of all of these different perspectives, is letting go of trying to change someone's point of view is love. And I had to say, I love myself and I love you, but I'm not going to stay around in this and try to change your point of view. Just going to have to say that you're a gift to me. This is all a gift to us today. So I don't know, break up the champagne, get the energy, drink, make some mung soup. I don't know. Celebrate this gift that we have today of you and I starting this dialogue to trigger us, to open some wounds so that we have this opportunity to deepen our understanding and protect our peace together.
So amazing.
That's
Thank you.
I've gotten through this whole thing. And I love how Joan started it. And I would request right now that Joan would be the bookend to this conversation, because I'm anticipating to hear more from her too. Like,
yes, I am too,
I'm
to
not
be
being
honest.
selfish. I'm just saying I gotta close this and bookend it with Joan.
You got it. You got it. I just want to say, when you were talking about the different triggers, this is the 𝗷𝗙𝗙𝗧𝗏. We have the principles of this in this book to be able to help through these challenges that we're going through. The wisdom that I have learned in this group, from this book, from, all of the teachings over the last 3 years I've been coaching for years and years, and the principles that I received here have been invaluable. It's been like the extra missing link, and it's incredible. So thank you. And my heart is with you during this moment and change. But you know what? You just said something to me that my coach this week told me, to love myself more than I love the other person, or to love myself more than I love the event or the service or whatever it is. I really commend you. It's beautiful. Thank you. Nehemiah, really quickly, can you say it really quickly? We're really out of time. And then we'll finish up with Joan.
Quick is good.
Pardon?
Quick is good.
Okay, good.
For my teacher, love is the answer. Doesn't matter what are the questions. The present that somebody brought so strong is the answer. Because the only way to be in the heart is to be in the present and to be in our breath, and even in the pause, the silent pause between the breaths. So I say what I had to say, but the main thing is maybe even if you can take a second for everybody to breathe and to pause between the breaths, then all our concepts are valid. It was very beautiful. But there's even deeper wisdom in our heart, in our breath, and in the Shabbat, the break, the pause between the breaths. So if you want to, do it for a minute. If not, you can move on and do it in another place.
That is so great. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank
Do you
you
want
for
to do it? Do you want to do it?
You know what? Let's go to Joan first, and then afterwards, if people want to stick around, then they can. Joan.
Yeah.
Hello again. Yeah, I was writing like a mad person in the chat because there's so many cool things that were said today. It was phenomenal. And then when 𝗁𝗔𝗏 was saying some things, it was coming back to what I had originally planned to talk about. That and Marissa, what you said was amazing. And I wrote in the chat, you loved yourself more, not than the other person, but you loved yourself more than the couple. Than that dream, like the couple of how it would be. So that's not loving the other person. That's actually loving them even more, because by you improving your self-esteem, by loving yourself, that's going to help the world. And I know that I can take a page out of that book. So just as a little finale, what I was, and 𝗁𝗏 really set this off in my mind, is that we can't be the victim. We can't bring ourselves down and feel bad for other people, because the humanity, I think, is looking for the conscious people who understand this concept to bring ourselves upward to help everybody. We can't help the drowning person by jumping into the pool with them. We need to stay on the shore, throw them the line, and bring them over, and be calm about it, and not just freak out and panic because they're drowning. So and what we're going to do with Linda's, announcement about the 4 minutes for peace, we're going to be, as a community, they're trying to get 1 billion people. Cryon was the one who said that if we can get this 1 billion people to meditate in the more all together, we can have a definite shift. And Lynn McTaggart has shown many studies where the power of this collective consciousness can help. So we can't just feel bad about them, because feeling bad about people that are suffering is not helping anybody. We need to know better and bring ourselves up. Now, the last thing I just want to say is a little scientific study. It might help people understand, or even 𝗁𝗏, more for you to understand why you just cannot get out of this feeling. It's so hard, because you said you want to, but it's so hard. There was a rat study done where they had taken the rats and put them on this electrified platform, and they would shock them at the same time that they would spray a cherry blossom smell. So they had this smell trigger, plus they got the reaction of a shock that hurt them. So they did that through one generation of rats. When those rats had babies, they didn't do anything to them. They sprayed the cherry blossom smell, and they didn't shock them. Then they put the babies of those second parent, the middle, so the grandkids of those animals that got shocked. The minute that they sprayed that cherry blossom smell without any shock, they reacted. So you can see that you might not know where your feelings are coming from, because your ancestors went through a traumatic experience. So it's just to know that just because things don't make sense right now in your brain, like, why can't I get out of this? There could be post or transgenerational problem or trauma that you're having to deal with. And by you picking up the challenge and dealing with it, you are going to stop that perpetuation of this negativity for the generations before you, and surprisingly enough, for those generations behind you. You can heal the past. You can heal those generations by you doing the work now. So we know better and we're going to do better. We can't go into, like Joe Dispenza says, now that you know, you can't go back and say, oh, I don't know, and I'm not going to do the work. You got to do the work. We got to go into our hearts. Like everybody was talking about, the breathing is one thing that's amazing. There's so many things, being present, having dialogue with people, being curious about their perspective. You don't have to switch your sides. You don't have to be like, oh, I got to take a side. You can stay where you are centered and still listen to everybody. And knowing all these things that this community knows, and it's a lot of stuff we know, we have a responsibility to help increase the vibration of this earth. And I know we can all do it. So go team.
Joan, thank you. It just reminded me of the story in the book where there was the war, and the 𝗬𝗙𝗘𝗧𝗦, they would go to the war field after the war had rules, and there was a beginning and an ending, and they would come on the field and be able to support and help the wounded in any way that they could. It didn't matter what side they were on. It didn't matter who they were. They were just giving love. That's what the main thing of this call has been, the love and the understanding, and to do that we have to observe, and those are all the principles of this of Dr. Naram. They're all of the ancient secrets. Sorry, I have like 12 billion thoughts going through my head, and it's hard to anchor them down because it's just been, this chapter has been on my heart for a couple of weeks, and I had no idea that we would have this type of conversation. I knew that we would have a very good conversation, but I had no idea that it would go this direction. And I appreciate all of your openness and your willingness to be able to share, and your vulnerability. Like I said, I had another thought, and it's gone now, but please be kind to yourself. The reason why I started this is where my thought was, is I was watching Dr. Clint give his first lecture to people in Russia. And I thought, what does it take to make somebody change? What is it that causes us to change? And I really liked what Joseph said, you know, the person, the light bulb has to really want to change in order for it to change. So anyway, with that said, we are really, really late, and we'll go ahead and do some breakout rooms, but if you cannot stay, I understand. Before we do that, I really want to come together as a community. Let's rub our hands together and send out love, and to everyone. First of all, to everybody on the call, everybody that is in need, you know, all of the world. I mean, thank you. Thank you for breaking open today. Thank you for your triggers today. Thank you for your communication today. Thank you for your willingness to show up and say hard things and say loving things. Thank you.
I love you and I am with you. With love from Mount Shasta, California.
I love you and I'm with you too. Yeah, let's all
Be well. Be well.
I love you and I'm with you.
Love
you, and I am
And I'm with
love you, and I'm with you.
Love you.
Thank you, Jana. You've been wonderful today, Jana.
Thank
Thank you, thank you.
everyone.
Love you and with
Love you and I'm with you.
Love to everybody. Much love.
everyone.
you and with you.
I love you and I'm with you.
Love you and I'm with you.
Love you, and I'm with you.
Love you.
So tight.
Love you and I'm with you. Sweet, man. Sweet. That is sweet.